Welcome back to Natty19's Behind the Screen. This is Chuck, and with me here tonight, it's almost a full house. We've got Jay, our GM.
Yo.
Christy Lee.
Hello.
And we have Swaney, James Swain, who plays Copernicus Hart.
Heyo. What's up, guys?
All right, I got to tell you guys that this is going to be one of my favorite BTSs, probably just because of the subject matter, because episode 10 and episode 11 is dense.
Yeah, thick episodes.
It's pretty sweet. We've got a lot going on in these two episodes, but it starts off episode 10 starts off kind of mellow, like where we just get finished with the Sturge encounter from episode 9.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
And
at the mouth of the cave is where that begins.
Yep.
The mouth of madness.
And madness it was. But so we're resting. We're resting after the Sturge encounter. And I didn't want to talk too much about what was going on in the cave, except there is one thing that Copernicus does actually, and he takes something from every single beast that we fight. Takes a trophy of some kind. You're here with us, Copernicus.
Yes.
Do you mind shedding a little?
Where you're going with this? Yeah.
I was just wondering if you had anything to. So in this case, you start roasting the Sturge.
I think I allude to possibly we'll get to that later. What I'm doing with all that?
So you want it to be a little bit of a mystery, you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've dropped some breadcrumbs.
He actually dropped it in
listening.
episode 11, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, he dropped a little in episode 11, but we're not quite there yet. And
Yeah, we can acknowledge its creepiness.
yeah, I just didn't know if you had more that you can give us there. But that's cool. I can understand keeping it close to your.
I'll tell you what. You put it out there. It definitely seems like nobody wants anything to do with that, right? Copernicus, as a player, how does that make you feel going into that with Copernicus? You seeing the way the other characters reacting to you doing this, because it's clearly been a bit. I don't want negative might be too strong of a word.
No, maybe eye raising.
Yeah, offsetting
I mean,
to the rest of the group.
I think I've seen people turn their heads in certain parts, but
Yeah, definitely Irame's raised her eyebrows or looked away at points.
yeah.
Well, he's a warlock, so he's collecting his little bits and pieces for some magic.
So that's it. He's just he's used to that behavior.
Not as Irame, but as a player, I feel like he's going to make something and it's going to be awesome, and I'm going to be like, why the fuck wasn't I roasting bat heads?
Yeah,
I'm going to be jealous.
So at first, I thought he was making trophies, like with the first couple of battles, but then it's starting to. The theme is starting to build, and it seems like there's much more to that.
I like it.
And I don't know. I think
it's one of those things. Like we wanted our characters to have like some kind of crafting. So I've been kind of making it up as I go along, I guess. But in doing that, I've formulated a plan of what I'm doing.
awesome. Yeah, definitely. You've definitely picked up on that. Quincy's been lax in his crafting.
As is Irame.
But how does it make you feel, James, that the rest of us, every time you start harvesting pieces, we all kind of turn our heads and look at you?
That's a perfect reaction.
I figured you'd like that attention.
Yeah.
The other thing that happens when we're resting is that Quincy talks to Zavril, and he asks him, he makes a deal with Zavril, essentially, like, hey, we're both writing letters to our family. We both have our journals that we're keeping. If one of us goes down, maybe the other one could deliver the messages.
Yeah.
And
Zavril's a map. What was it?
Oh yeah. So and the other part of that was that I wanted him to destroy the map. Mm-hmm. And he didn't. He kind of sounded like, what did he say?
Why would you want to destroy a map or something like that?
And like this map is so valuable.
I think that if you had entrusted Irame and anything were to happen, Irame's curiosity would not allow her to not. She might, as you wish, burn it, but I don't think she'd be able to resist looking at it first.
Right. And that would be more understandable, but
You definitely picked the perfect person
Yeah.
to ask that to.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: if I asked Irame, would she would look at it, but would she show the rest of the group?
No, she would. I mean, ultimately, whatever knowledge could be gained, she'd gain, and then she'd burn it. But I think that even though she's a high elf, Irame runs a lot on emotion, and she kind of gives in to those curious moments and to those emotional moments. And I think a lot of times she would look.
Yeah, well, I couldn't fault her for that. I mean, that whole scene though didn't play as well in my head the whole couple days before we played. I had this idea of how it was going to play out as a player. You know, this is going to be such a great moment. It's going to be mysterious. It's going to
and that's the double-edged sword. You know, you picked a great person, but at the same time,
that's not his
no,
fault.
let me ask you this.
It was a tough night. I mean, we were exhausted. And, you know,
let me ask. Yeah, but was that the night I was fevering?
Both of you were sick.
Yeah.
Both me and Kayway were pretty
Yeah, I
sick.
was coming
Kayway
off
had
of
to
it.
stop to go to the bathroom a few times.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So let me ask you this, and I don't know if you want to reveal it quite yet, but what was the deal with the map?
I could reveal. What can I reveal? I said as much in the show, so I guess I could just dance around it a little bit more. Is that Quincy's starting to think the map is to someplace dangerous? Like when he first got the map, he even talks about it in his journal, how like excited he is, how it just sort of fuels his imagination. But now that we're in Chult and we're learning more about what this place is like, and we're seeing other puzzle pieces starting to fall into place, he's starting to wonder if maybe like this is a place that is better left alone.
Okay.
Now, this is the journal you posted.
Oh yeah, I did post that.
So
I
people
posted that
can
journal. Yep,
Actually, go read that.
that's on Tumblr and Facebook. Maybe I can't remember where. Everywhere. Tumblr, Facebook, probably.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I just want to cut in real quick to anybody listening. If you guys have any questions about anything that we're doing, shoot us an email. We're at Natty19Podcast@gmail.com, and we want to hear from you guys if you have any questions or your input. Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't want us to read your question on the show, on the behind the screen, let us know that it's just for us.
Yep.
Otherwise, we might start reading emails.
Yep.
Let's see.
We'll
So
start reading emails on the show. Well,
Yeah,
we're always going to read them.
I thought that was clear, but all right. So that was our cave. That was pretty much what the beginning of episode 10 in the cave. We're all we're resting from the fight. We use up mechanically, at the table, we're using up hit die to heal up a little bit. We're getting ready to recon to learn about Taguta village. Up until this point, I think it was assumed that the village was abandoned.
Yeah. Or at least it had been claimed by the jungle.
Right. And at the end of the previous episode, we learn, that the Zinti their territory had overreached it.
Expanded.
And now we're creeping into the camp to see what's what. And this moment is a moment, like what happens next, like reminds me of why I love the Uncharted game so much. Every Uncharted game, you're playing the game and it's an awesome story and you're playing and you're having a good time, but there's always that turning point where it goes from, your classic adventure story, Indiana Jones style adventure story, to something just a little more supernatural and a little darker. And I think when we see the lizard men, when we see the Yuan-ti, well, we think they're lizard men or something maybe, but we discover that they're Yuan-ti. When we see them in the camp, that kind of reminds me of that moment where the Uncharted games pivot.
Yep. It's worth mentioning. Uncharted. It's a theme, I think, amongst that genre. If you include Indiana Jones, Tomb Raider, there's and I think they surround themselves on that theme that I think they wanted to encapsulate as a whole in Tomb of Annihilation, was that you have this familiar kind of setting with this kind of supernatural undertone and in some cases overtone. But yes, definitely.
But and I don't think any of us expected to see anything other than Zinti. We thought the Zinti were going to be, the people that we're going to infiltrate. Maybe
Yep.
try to negotiate or fight or.
Which, it could have very well been the case. I always try to, when I'm thinking of stuff like this, I try to think about what you guys are expecting, and then kind of put a little bit more of a layer on it just to make it a little bit more interesting. I don't know if you guys noticed this on a side note, but as we're playing, and I like this because I know as a player it's fun, but
Yep.
you'll hear, especially K-Way and other people, as I'm kind of revealing stuff, they'll like guess it,
Yeah.
like
Yep.
it's a guy and a girl, they kind of what I'm about to say, which that's part of the fun is you guys as players discovering this information, and like guessing it or figuring it out. But I try to put that extra layer on. So, yeah, you figured it out and you get to feel good, but there's also a little something more to it that I get to feel good about, But,
And the Yuan-Ti is a race. I don't often see them. We haven't seen them in the last, as we started playing a year or two ago. We haven't seen them in any of our adventures, but that's one of those races that just takes me back, like to the classic D&D days and seeing like the ink drawn black and white art, in the old books.
yeah, the Yuan-Ti are
An ancient race.
yeah, and they're also, I noticed a lot of other games, even under the guise of lizard men, so to speak, a lot of them, like if you look at, I think EverQuest has a species of lizard men that are pretty much identical to the Yuan-Ti of D&D. There's
Right.
a lot of iterations that come out of that.
Yeah, it's Skyrim.
Skyrim, yep.
The
And
Skyrims are kind of like the Maleficents, Malicens, right? With the
yeah, I mean, they're a little different too because they're more humanized, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Either way,
Yeah, and I mean, even D&D in itself has a variety of you have kobolds, you have lizard men, you have Yuan-Ti, so there's a variety of draconic
creatures, right? But
right,
the
reptilian
Yuan-Ti,
creatures,
well,
yeah.
we'll get into the Yuan-Ti later, I'm sure.
Yeah, we learn more about them later. But at that moment, we sort of see that there's this whole other thing going on, which kind of raises the hair on the back of the neck, but at the same time is almost relieving.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a little bit relieved.
Because no longer do we have, we were imagining over 100
Cannibals
that we would have to somehow navigate, fight or negotiate with. But in this case, there were still a lot of Yuan-Ti there, but maybe it was easier to stealth through.
Yeah, it was more of it turned, yeah, I see where you're coming from. It turned from you're up against immeasurable odds and how are you going to deal with this, to it's more of like a forward camp of a handful of Yuan-Ti that are currently occupying it.
Yeah,
at the moment.
essentially it was the Zinti and us all of a sudden had a common enemy.
Yeah, that's true as well. Another piece on the board that you can use should you choose to your advantage.
Yeah, and it definitely seemed, as we got closer and started learning more about what was going on, it definitely seemed like, if we could somehow, we saw that the Zinti were enslaved, and that if we could somehow free them, then either they would fight the Yuan-Ti or they would flee, and there would be enough mayhem, to provide some sort of smokescreen for us.
Yep.
But yeah, so we start reconning the camp, and we see I keep forgetting, what's the name of the patrol creature?
Oh, the Brood Guard is
Brood
the
Guard.
technical name for them. The Yuan-Ti Brood Guard.
Are they tied in with the Yuan-Ti as a race?
Yep. Yeah, they are
that's cool.
they are a subpart, which I'll probably get into the Yuan-Ti lore a bit later, but they'll be a part of that, I suppose, that section.
Yeah, and well, as we're doing reconnaissance, we do see that there are boats on the shore, which makes Quincy pretty happy. He's been talking about having an exit route, an exit plan the whole time, and but that all that stuff is near what episode 10 kind of centers around, which is like this hut And the way the hut is, this is like maybe the leader's hut. There's something about this hut, right?
It was I was
Elder's
calling it
hut.
the Elder's Hut.
Yeah,
the Elder's Hut.
throughout the episode.
Right.
So was it the Elder's Hut of the Zinti, or
Zimwa B knew it as the Elder's Hut,
okay,
which
that's
is why
what
I
it was
was
when it was
Taguta.
his village.
in Taguta Village. Yes, so that's why I was dropping that because I figured that would be, you guys would have picked that up from Zimwa B talking about it.
We get into the Elder's Hut not without having to fight our first Yuan-Ti opponent.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, maybe even our first intelligent humanoid
yeah.
opponent.
Yep.
Before that, we fought zombies. We fought crocodiles, rather.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I don't think we brought this up before. This is kind of going back, but now that you mention it, the humanoids and zombies, the charm, Copernicus's charm on the zombie.
Yep.
I don't think we mentioned it on air that we figured out the discrepancy. I think I had mentioned that I was looking into it. You said you were looking into it at some point and couldn't find, didn't make any sense. We summed it up as some Mandela effect. But in fact, zombies aren't humanoid, and that's the trick part. They're.
Well, I thought it was because of charm monster and charm person.
Yeah, but the thing is under the charm description, it says any humanoid, right? And zombies are not humanoid, and they're undead.
Okay.
So that's where that falls, everybody. You
Case
can't.
closed.
All right.
Yeah, case closed. We cannot charm undead.
So there's no
All right.
slashes. There's no undead / humanoid.
No, there's charm.
Or do they-
Oh no.
I'm just saying in
undead-
that category,
yeah,
there's always
categories.
one that they fall under.
I believe so.
Interesting.
I believe so. Yeah.
Well, and it makes sense for a variety of reasons, I think, but it's good to know where the rules fall on that one.
Anyway, continue. I figured I'd cover that real quick.
Yeah, cool. So we're fighting our first intelligent humanoid opponent, and I don't know about for everybody else. I mean, maybe Zavril's fought people before. I feel like Copernicus has. I wouldn't think Irame would have.
No.
And it was definitely a first for Quincy. I mean, Quincy sparred, with his master, but not he didn't fight another intelligent creature. And so
to the death. Right.
right. And we all kind of sneak up and we try to get the jump on this guy, and we're going straight for the damage. And you brought it up. I don't remember if it was in game that you brought it up or after the game, but
Me?
Yes.
Yeah, you brought up why didn't you guys try to knock him out?
Or subdue him.
Subdue him.
Subdue him,
Well,
yeah.
are you gonna ask why I thought?
No,
that?
I guess I just thought, yeah, how?
Mm-hmm. Good. I'm glad you. I didn't want to interrupt you before you finished asking.
No.
What I was thinking specifically was that moment with the zombies. First and foremost, Copernicus went to charm the people on the shore.
Yeah.
I think first and foremost, Quincy tried to charm the invisible, the fairy
The
dragon.
Fae, yeah.
And I think I talked to James about this off air, and he had said because of that, it had already been done. I didn't want to keep overdoing the same thing, which I get on board with. It can get redundant, everybody doing the same exact thing over and over again. But in this case, where it's a clandestine situation, you need to subdue this thing.
Yeah.
I know it's hard for you guys because you can't see the hit points of these guys. This guy had 66 hit points.
Wow.
To sneak up on him and take him out in 1 or 2 hits was
Not
out of the
gonna
equation.
happen, yeah.
You know what I mean? But yeah, that being said, I guess that's I swear I expected a charm to go out there, or some sort of hypnotize or mesmerize or something to happen where it would take him out, some sort of crowd control, effect.
No, we'd been sneaking around the village. And
When
I
we-
think, Copernicus had initiative, so I was pushing for attack. I figured the 4 of us could take him out quick enough, and we did.
You could have got if there was
When in
if
the
there was-
beginning, Irame was a little bit, or not. I was a little bit like, so wait, we're doing this? We're just gonna go in?
Yeah, I hear Christy like, oh, we're attacking, I guess.
But I don't think that I would have thought there was another choice anyway, because the spells at Irame's disposal wouldn't have allowed her to do anything, and her hit points are like 12, and she's not gonna go in and try to subdue a warrior, you know?
Right. And for Quincy, his charm ability isn't just as simple as casting a spell. I mean, he has to play music for
a minute,
a whole minute. So he has to have essentially a captive audience in order to try to pull his charm off. But I didn't even think of Copernicus's charm. I mean, that would have been a good moment to use that one. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it would have been too repetitive. I mean, especially because the first charm was, just kind of, it was against, it was just kind of impassive.
It failed the first time. It was time for sword and board.
But we ended up taking him out, right?
Yeah.
So, but that combat.
I'm sorry, who dealt the final blow to the...
I think that was Quincy. Was that Quincy or no?
The final blow to the Yuante? It was my epic charge.
I was trying to take credit for
you. You couldn't give it to him? Come on.
So that could have made a difference too, like why we didn't have such a reaction to killing our first intelligent being, because Copernicus came in like a lunatic.
Well, I think it affected Quincy to some degree.
Handled us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed that combat, I think in general, Quincy was a little more relaxed in that combat. Like there was banter, a little bit of banter happening.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think actually for the first time in Natty19 podcast history,
guys love to say that.
Copernicus described his lead-in to his attack and successfully
dealt a blow.
Landed it, yeah.
Wait, was that the one where he cheated and rolled first and then described?
I don't think so.
Okay.
That's much later.
Yeah. Okay.
But during that combat, we did have some question about the wild magic rules.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It was just a little bit of a misunderstanding, but
So we got it all straightened out now. We know what the rules are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I had the right numbers in my head, but I had the rules wrong. I thought that if I rolled a 1 or a 20, essentially a fumble or a crit, I'd have to roll on the chart. But that's not what it is. It's at the DM's discretion. When I cast a spell, he can make me roll a 20-sided die. And if it lands on a 1, then I roll on the chart.
Yep. Or she has an ability. Wild mages have a class ability called Tides of Chaos, which essentially allow them to re-roll a roll. And when they use that ability, then the next time they cast a spell, before they take a long rest, the next time they cast a spell that's not a cantrip, then I can automatically force them to roll on the wild magic table.
I think you might be able to beyond that as well.
No, not for a regular. Regular, I can force you to roll a d20, and if it lands on a 1, then you roll on the table. But with Tides of Chaos, I can automatically say roll on the table.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I understand that.
Yep.
We had a Tides of Chaos at some point.
We did, but it was the finish. She's gotten smart about it. She uses it in the end of the fight, right?
Yeah.
And then what happens is you guys end up taking a rest. So I can't do it. She doesn't cast another spell before
sure
resting.
there will be a time.
Oh, there will be a time. I'm waiting.
I don't actively do that. That's just Irame's lucky magic following her ass around.
Right.
But to go in wild, I don't know if that was the only question you had about wild magic. For those who don't know, it's a sorcerer subclass, I guess you'd call it an archetype. Yeah, archetype. And it's pretty much what happens is if you can picture the sorcerer being a magical being, a wild mage or wild magic sorcerer is kind of like overflowing with magic. So at some point it's going to burst out, you know, it's just in there and it's waiting to come out, you know. and that's straight out of the player's handbook. But for
Right.
those listening who wanted a little bit more clarity on this whole wild magic thing, I just figured I'd say that real quick.
Yeah, and I think my impression of wild mages, I mean, they were a thing for a long time, but I never went anywhere near them, and it was always kind of like, oh, it's kind of neat. But there was a little bit of a taboo in terms of bringing one into the game session.
Yep,
you know?
I played one 2nd edition, and it was a lot of fun though. Oh yeah.
So yeah, we end up defeating the Yuan-Ti, and this is the Elder's Hut. We go in, and our 2 out of the 4 of the adventurers, Saven and Elgin, are in there, and they're manacled.
Were they manacled? I thought they were just in a cage.
Oh, in a cage. In
Yeah.
a cage. Okay, I remember picking a lock to
Yep.
something. Yeah, so they're in a cage. Now, I wouldn't have thought that. I mean, we see Zinti laborers. They're enchanted. They're working, and then we go into this Elder's Hut. We've got these other prisoners. These are obviously more valuable to the Yuan-Ti than, just the Zinti that they're using for work.
Sure.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be in a cage in a hut guarded by one of them. So we know that there's something special about them, or that the Yuan-Ti are using them for something or want them for another purpose. They're not just additional labor,
Well, I don't think that's completely ruled out. There's still always the off chance that, that they were waylaid mere weeks ago.
Yep.
Maybe even a
Days.
week ago. So I guess it's not off the table that they just hadn't been processed yet, so to speak. Not to say that there's nothing special.
To be completely honest, without what at first thought, that's what Irame assumed until giving it more thought. She immediately thought, like, when we first went in there, she just assumed that they hadn't been collared yet.
Yeah, and that brings up the question of how much effort goes into creating one of these slaves, and do they need like a special collar and to have it imbued, and
I think in a nutshell, the Zinti were the special ones. I think in this situation, just have it a little reversed. I think the Zinti were the special ones in this regard, and these guys they were waylaid. You know what I mean? They were just
more like prisoners.
Yeah,
rather
they were
than
just
slaves.
caught in their territory, and they grabbed them. I didn't really chase that lead all too much, but if
Right.
I were to chase it right now, I would probably go as far as saying they were never going to be collared.
Well, we set them free from the cage, and one of them is sick. He was given a drink, a concoction. Did we find out what that was about?
Nope. That's still an open book.
Okay.
Yep. You try to cure him. That's how you discovered. You try to cure wounds on him. He didn't have any
Didn't work.
wounds. That's when you discovered that there was in fact something of an illness of sorts going on. And Saven did tell you that he had they forced a liquid of sorts upon him. So
But Zimwabi seemed somewhat familiar with what it could be. He at least had a sense of urgency, and he seemed to know that if he was able to bring him back to Nyanzaru, that he could be treated.
I think that I could be mistaken. I think that was more so coming from Saven.
Saven.
Saven's reaction to get him to safety, and Zimwabi was just kind of taking Saven's lead. Like, okay, Zimwabi at this point felt like shit. He was confronting these guys that he had abandoned, and it was such a short amount of time. A lot was going on, but there was that kind of moment between them right away where Saven immediately kind of like, don't worry about it, Zimwabi. This is the problem now. Thank you for coming back.
I was gonna say he seemed happy glad that he came back.
Yeah.
It was good for us to learn what their mission was. I mean, at first we were just going in because we wanted the travel documents. So we were like, okay, there's some adventurers. This is a little side quest, a little mini quest. We're going to get our travel documents out of this. but we do learn about, some greater goings on. We learn about their mission, and I don't know if it's foreshadowing, but they went into the jungle because they had received a letter, and then they didn't get any follow-up communication, and that letter said, "Camp Righteous belongs to the dead."
Did that?
Yep, that was their mission.
Yeah.
And that was their mission. That's why Zimwabi was bringing them into the jungle, and then they got waylaid. But we were looking at, like, I don't know if any of you have looked at the map, any of the other players, Copernicus or Irame.
Yeah.
Camp Righteous is like right south, like just a little further up the river than where we were at.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, but what's it like a day and a half further?
Yeah, it wasn't very far.
Couple hexes.
So to lay it
Yeah.
out, essentially, these people were going to inspect Camp Righteous because of the zombie crowd that we had encountered, right?
We're assuming that the two are related.
Camp Righteous
at the
belongs
moment.
to the dead, assuming that mob went through Camp Righteous, and then we met them on the river.
You guys saw the debris floating in the water.
Saw the
I tried
debris
to lay
floating in the
down-
water,
I
yep.
tried to lay down a little bit of foreshadowing.
And then that's when they were attacked by the Yuan-Ti and pulled into the Zinti village.
Although there's one thing that I was looking at the map today, and I wasn't cheating. I wasn't looking at the real map. I was looking at the map that we know
The
is
player
revealed,
map. Yes,
the player map. And I was under the impression that the zombies that we encountered were on the eastern banks of the river
They were on the left side.
as we were going up, which would be, and going up the river is heading south, so that would put them on the east. Yeah, which is the opposite side of the river of Camp Righteous. So they weren't crossing the river where we were at, where we encountered
Yep.
them. But if Camp Righteous and these zombies, if there's a relationship there, if there's a connection,
Yep.
then it would seem that the river, at some point at least, they are able to cross the river, or it spans
Yep.
across the river.
No, that's not the case. Now you got me thinking either I fucked up, but I just opened the map, and Camp Righteous is in fact on the east side of the Sashan Star.
When I was looking in the map, it looked on the left side of the river on the map, but not our left if we were traveling.
No, if you were traveling inland, it's on your left.
Oh,
it's
where's
on
the-
it's on the undead side. Here. So this is the undead
Oh.
region here. Camp Righteous would be right there.
Oh.
And this is
Oh, maybe I was looking at...
maybe you were looking at the undead territory line and thought that was the river, maybe?
I don't know what I was looking at.
Maybe Camp Vengeance. Maybe. 'Cause
Maybe.
there's a Camp Vengeance. Yeah, Camp Vengeance is what you're looking at. Look, that's on you guys' side.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, and it's not very far from Camp Righteous.
Yeah.
So this is the map that we have at our headquarters, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and then we quickly gather some stuff from the hut. Irame picks up a map. I don't know if we've had time to look at that map.
I don't think so.
And
Not yet.
I'm just thinking Irame should have taken a better look at this map back at headquarters for when Quincy tried to talk to a fucking dead person.
You guys did look. You guys did. Oh yeah, yeah. You didn't look the new map that you guys.
The new
found.
map we did not
gotcha,
look at.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep.
but yeah, I mean, at this point, Elgin is sick. Zaven wants to get him back to Port Nyanzaru, and we say our goodbyes to Zimwabi.
Mhm.
It's a little moment there.
You know, when shit
I
like
love
that
the way
happens.
that episode ended.
Yeah.
That was a good ending.
When shit like that happens, you want those goodbye moments, but in real life they're not going to happen the way you want them. You know,
They're gonna be
gonna
brief.
and
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
going to be, like, oh fuck, I wish we had more time for this, but here it is.
That's actually what I thought while we were playing it out. Like, I imagined Irame just cramming all that paperwork into her bag and Zimwabi saying goodbye and her being like, you need to go now. Like,
Yeah.
you need to leave. We need to go.
Yeah. I think it played out well. I think it was great.
Yeah, I liked that episode a lot. I definitely felt like, so I said it before with episode 8 when we encountered the zombies, like this is a turn, like that was a turning point, because no longer are we looking at just like crocodiles and assassin vines. We're not looking at typical jungle encounters. I mean, now there's like something darker.
Something darker, and I think a face. Yeah, you have a face that's staring back at you.
Yeah, episode
We saw
10
the black
took it up a
smoke for the
notch.
first time.
Yep.
What was I going to say? That was a turning point that was off the hook for me too. The way I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know Zim was going to be leaving you guys at all. I was like, oh fuck.
I love it when that happens. When
And I was like, okay. All right. I guess I'm just losing my NPC. Fuck.
How am I going to give my players any more information?
Right. I love having an NPC in there, especially Zim would be. Yeah. I've grown fond of him.
Yep. So then from here, we're on our own and we're in this camp, and that's where we're at with episode 11. We're still in the camp, and we're infiltrating, and it's just us now. Zimwabi is gone. He's taking Savin and Elgin to go back to Nyanzaru. I want to start with Quincy's flashback. That happened right at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, the minute you saw that lift.
And I got to say, like, I wish I was a little more on top of reacting. But I'm always going to criticize my own playing.
I think you did good. Yeah,
I definitely brought the relevance of it into the moment. But what I liked about the flashback, there were a lot of things I liked about that flashback. I think you did a really good job with that.
Thank you.
I liked how you showed the contrast between Quincy's father and Quincy's tutor, like the contrast in their dispositions.
Well, that all of that was based on the writing that you created all that. I just kind of put it in the scene, So.
Right, but I mean, you had to bring it to life, right? You didn't.
Sure.
So, and I thought you did a good job.
No, well, thanks.
And the expedition. So in the flashback, it's his 15th birthday. And he's on an expedition, perhaps even his first expedition.
Mm-hmm. I was actually worried about. I didn't want to. I always get weird about doing player flashbacks in case you didn't have that vision.
Right.
I want you guys to be surprised too, to some degree, when I do flashbacks. So I might ask you. I think I asked you like a question about your tutor.
Right.
I asked you a couple obscure questions about it, but I always get nervous about in kind of impeding on what your vision of what you had. But I'm glad that you approved. Because I don't know.
That's one of the great things about D&D and gaming, though. Like, I want you to surprise me. Like, I don't think a player should care what the DM does with the background. I mean, within reason, obviously.
Yep.
Right, it's definitely collaborative, and I understand. Like, I definitely had an impression of what the spirit of Master Triss was, what his general personality was, and when you asked, like, I gave you like this is how he is. I didn't fill in a lot of details or anything, so like you have plenty to play with, and it is a collaborative storytelling. So if something doesn't quite match up, then. Well, that's the game.
Sure.
Yeah, you roll with it.
Oh, yeah. No, I would never stop doing it, but
right.
There's always that underlying, like, I hope he likes it,
What I thought was interesting about this from the greater stories perspective, though, is that this expedition that he's on is funded by Sindra Sylvain. That gets dropped in the flashback.
Yep, sure does.
So that ties the 3C shipping and freight to Sindra Sylvain before the current expedition.
Long before. Yeah. A few years.
Is there anything more to go into there, or is that just?
It's pretty much just me trying to lay a little bit more of the episode 1 was chock packed of information, and I always hate. I think I said it before.
A lot of exposition.
There's a lot of exposition going on, and it gets tough to keep up on all of it. So I decided there's a lot more to it, and I want it to come out, and that was just, and I'm going to do it in a fashion like that where it's a little bit more in smaller doses, you know. So that's all really that is. I wanted Quincy to have a flashback. I wanted everyone to get a little bit more of a glimpse of Quincy, while also seizing the moment to deliver a little bit more of a connection to what's going on with the 3C shipping and also the main story of because Syndra Sylvain is part of the Tomb of Annihilation story. So I'm just trying to connect it all, really, make it a little bit more embodied between my homebrew stuff for you guys and the actual written adventure.
Yep. And Syndra Sylvain, I mean, we met her on the boat. I mean, we know that there's a connection between her and the 3C shipping of freight. What this flashback does, like you said, it brings it back years before. Mm-hmm. And are we ever going to find out what that expedition was about? That first one?
Yeah, maybe. You know, I like to do shit like that in case, because something later on might come up that I want to bring to light, and I'll need a reason. I'll need a place, right, a time and a place, and that could be that. You know, that's in my bag of tricks. I can say, I'll put it in that expedition. Could be the Krugen Sphere. Yeah. You know, but you know what I mean.
Right. But that's the flashback, essentially. I thought it was well placed because while we're hiding in the bushes, we're watching the drummer, we're watching the slaves, we're sort of evaluating the structure that's going on. And after the flashback, Quincy he knows that this is a dig site. It's not just that they're building spires or that they're building something. They're also digging here.
I got a quick question. This is a good one for the audience as well. Any DMs out there, players? I had this, and my initial idea, I was like, this might be going too far with Quincy, and because if this was canon, it might affect a lot of your stuff going on forward. I was actually gonna give young Quincy a really bad stutter, you know. You know what I mean? And Thalen Triss would be as well helping you with your stutter. But I was like, you know what? That's a little bit too impeding, I think. Maybe,
yeah. I don't know. You know what? It's something that I don't know how I'd react just hearing about it, like in game. But it's something that, like, looking back, I'm wondering, like, that could be an interesting turn.
It's something you can play with, you know?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I'm so close to death, or maybe after you faint, when you wake up, you're stuttering again for a while. You know? You could totally play with that.
Yeah, but it was during that part where, when they were walking away, and young Quincy was like, of course, that's my favorite one thus far. I was like playing it out, the stutter. Yeah. I did a few stutter runs, with that, and I was like, should I do that to him? I don't know.
Yeah, but I don't know. It might have been tough just to be surprised with it. You know what I mean?
Like, that being said, though, to our listeners, if you were a player and your DM had done something like that with your character, I want you to write in, how would you react? Would you like that? And can you go on it? And as a DM, would you even consider your players' feelings on doing something like that to them? Let us know, please. I'd like to know.
I would actually like to give you an example of that happening to me in this very campaign.
Oh.
So when you did your flashback for Irame, I always imagined Irame entering the room that had the chalice in it, as mischievous, like she was going in to see what it was, or perhaps a family member, a young cousin or something dared her to go in, and it was accidental that she stumbled upon it. And in the flashback, it was more as if the chalice was calling to me. And that seems like very minute. Either way, she touches the chalice, these things happen. But it actually changed a little bit of Irame's sense of empowerment, because now it's that Irame was called to by this source of magic, or not revealed exactly what yet, but somehow she was fated. It feels that way for her right now, rather than her thinking she's just a screw up of a high elf and stumbled into this room and touched something that she wasn't supposed to touch.
Sure. You know.
And that changes how Irame would feel about her magic.
Yeah, and it could change your player's image of your character.
Yeah, and
you know,
even
a
in
little
game,
bit.
just having the flashback previous to that, she had this kind of interpretation that she kind of accidentally stumbled upon this, but then she has that flashback and it clears her memory of like, no, maybe I was supposed to touch the chalice, and that plays right along with the fact that immediately after the reveal of her magic and the flashback and everything, she's using it freely and more securely, more confidently.
Yeah.
Well, it's canon now.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, continue. I didn't mean to hijack it.
Yeah, no problem. And I mean, but that opens up that maybe opens up a little bit of the dialogue of in terms of like, if you are going to be messing around with, if you are going to be introducing things to your players' backgrounds. I mean, and of course you should never be afraid to introduce things to your players' backgrounds, but if you're going to touch on something, maybe it's good to have a solid understanding of the player's conception of their character.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though like the prerogative is there to play with the details, I feel like one of the thing that the player has control over is the concept of who their character is.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as the concept is intact.
Depends on the player, too. I'm a malleable person. I can take that and keep
Right.
going, and you know that about me because I'm your wife. But
In
other
my
players might not be the same.
In my defense, all right, she does have other concepts. And it just so happens that I chose one of her other ones, which is the naivety, which is she was naive. You know, she's going to follow a little voice. I think as a grown woman, Irame would follow a little voice.
Yeah, she probably would.
You know, so it
Yeah.
did play on a concept.
No, and this wasn't specifically for that
absolutely-
example
yeah.
either. It was
No,
more
I
like
absolutely agree, and I don't view it as a negative thing. In
I
any
know.
way.
I was just playing. I was just
yeah,
playing with my
and I was just speaking generally, not necessarily approaching it from a specific case. So this flashback happens. We know this is a dig site. We're all hiding in the bushes. We're kind of whispering to each other. We're talking about taking out the drummer. We're talking about taking out the guard in the tower or knocking down the tower. Trying to figure out how to find who we're looking for. We're not even exactly sure where they're at. And I think we go on for a little while trying to figure out our next move.
Yeah, you're strategizing.
Yeah.
Zimwabi left. I think that was a huge part of it. Zimwabi would have been like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah, Zimwabi
We
was,
blah 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 blah.
That's
blah.
a good point. I utilize Zimwabi oftentimes to kind of nudge you guys. If I see you're stuck too long on something, I would be like, you know, I would chime in as Zimwabi and be like, perhaps we should do, you know, you know what I mean? And
Right,
without
right.
that, you know, I'm not just gonna have like a journal page fall out of the sky and be like, oh, here's the way, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So it is tough.
Yeah, and I mean this is not a new problem for any group, for our group, for any group. I mean, every time you're running into a situation, whenever playing a game like this, there's always that moment where you're trying to assess the situation. You're trying to come up with all the decisions. I mean, I thought about in a game that I'm GMing, having a little like hourglass or something, like one of those little minute sand glasses.
Yep.
And not just giving 1 minute, but sort of like maybe flipping it twice. Like the first time is just for, wild ideas or whatever. But then when that runs out and you flip it the second time, then the players know we have to have a decision made.
Yeah. I think even if you didn't have a set amount of times you were going to flip it, an hourglass's presence would
Keep people
keep people moving.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
absolutely love that idea.
Yeah.
I'm all about pushing the pace and moving things forward. Like,
You
all
are.
the time.
But at the same
You
time,
got to keep it cracking.
At the same time, I think that it's moments like that where a lot of character details, personality
That is true.
details come out.
That is
You
true.
know,
And
I
is
can
it-
see lingering too long, but you
Yeah.
gotta at least have a linger.
I like when it's done. If we're doing it mostly in character, or at least like from our characters' perspectives,
Yes.
I like that a lot more than if we were sitting around metagaming for 15, 20
No,
minutes.
yeah, those, that would get cut out.
I actually am a
That
bit.
would get
I'm a
cut
bit
out.
of I'm a bit of an impatient player, and I always try to play it off sometimes through my character. Like, my character is scared. Let's figure this out. Or my character is nervous. Let's, Irame's tapping her foot. Like, let's make a move type thing.
Right. But while we're talking, and while we're trying to make our plans, the Yuan-Ti emerge from the tomb, from the lift in the dig site, and we see 1 pureblood and 2 Maleficents. And so, from what I understand of the Yuan-Ti power structure, pureblood's the low one on the totem pole. But when you see like 1 of one kind and 2 of the other, it almost feels like that 1 should be the special one, and the other 2 were like guards or something.
Absolutely. But in this case, the pureblood kind of was. The purebloods, not to go into too much of it, but the purebloods are the liaison between the Yuan-Ti and the rest of human civilization, so to speak. So in this case, when there's a group of humans or, human-like folk, the pureblood is going to take the lead, take the reins. And but in reality, the Maleficent's probably like hurry the fuck up, you know what I mean? Like deal with this quickly, you know what I mean? And so you would have that sense where the pureblood is actually leading this kind of group, but in reality, they're just doing their job as a translator, so to speak.
Right. Yes. So we get a little sense there that there's something important about this dig site, and I think maybe even Quincy makes the case, maybe even due to his flashback, like this is a dig site. They're looking for something. There's something down here, and he makes the case for going below. So we abandon the plan to take out the drummer and the guard on the tower, and we decide, if we can get down below, let's do it. And we do, and we discover that this is a false tomb. The first room that we go into, there's a sarcophagus, and there's no body in it. We're all looking around. Quincy's, his archaeology skills reveal that the tomb itself is of Yuan-Ti origin, which tells us that the Yuan-Ti have been here for a long time, and that there are probably other Yuan-Ti ruins throughout the jungles. Irame, she taps into her anthropological training. I like how you brought up like the point about death. We're in the sarcophagus, we're in the tomb.
I try to insert stuff when I actually think of it.
It's a good touch. It really is a good touch.
I liked it a lot.
And while we're doing all of this, Sybil shows up, and she starts talking about this time and this place. We're seeing in the symbols a little bit about the city of Omu.
Yes.
Sybil shows up, and she actually tells us about the city. So that, this city is hundreds of years old, right?
Yeah.
A couple hundred years old. And this tells us that Sybil herself, she's talking about it as if she was there, if she existed during that time. James, do you know all this about Sybil?
No, I'm not familiar with her entire past. I mean, I always assumed that she was possibly ancient.
Yep.
Going back a few hundred years, but there's no defined term there.
And based on her knowledge of what's going on with Omu and some of the stuff in Chult, like it sounds like, is she like from Chult, or at least regardless of like how long she's been there, like she spent some time. It sounds like she spent some time here, like she has intimate knowledge.
Possibly.
I thought that, but I also just assumed...
but she knows the Krugen sphere piece is there, so that might lead her to know about Chult, or...
So maybe from more of a research perspective than an experienced one.
Right. Because I have it baked in to their backstory that they've been researching and traveling around Faerun, searching for the pieces. So it would have came up that they were in Chult. And then, how she knows all about Omu and everything, that's beyond mine and Copernicus's knowledge.
Yeah, that's pretty much me surprising James with this background information. I intentionally dropped little cues when Sybil was speaking to make it sound like she was there. when she had laughed at the nobles fleeing into the jungle, calling them swine, the swine that they were. It made it sound personal,
Yeah.
like she was familiar with these nobles, and that was, and the way she kind of scoffed at the writing on the walls as if it's not accurate, when she when she walked up to those hieroglyphs and she started reading them, and then she just kind of hand waved them and went on to telling her story, That's where I was going with that, is I wanted you guys to get the sense that she was more familiar with it than this writing on the wall was, to add that little mystery. But is it that far-fetched if the Krugen sphere, which James created as part of his backstory, is somewhere in Chult, and Sybil is sending Copernicus? The only reason why he's in Chult is because Sybil's sending him there.
Right.
So is it that far-fetched that she does have deep ties to this land? And she even mentions that he was following in her footsteps.
It's not far-fetched at all.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
It's not far-fetched at all, but given that parts of the Krugen sphere were acquired, I'm assuming not in Chult, although I don't know where they all originated from.
Mm-hmm.
James has acquired all but one.
Mm-hmm.
And he acquired them from outside of Chult, and he came into contact with Sybil outside of Chult.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The fact that she brought him here and that she knows so much about what's going on, and given everything we're learning about the history of this place, I mean, this does not seem like, we're not catching glimpses of a period of Renaissance or a golden age. I mean, we're seeing some dark stuff in the history of this place.
I definitely, with Sybil, I love Sybil so much. I think she's such a great add-on to the story. And when she was speaking, Irame was sort of looking at her in the light that, like, maybe that she's not necessarily from Chult, but that the fact that she can transcend a plane even on the level that she can now, even though it's not her whole self, kind of made Irame envision her as someone who was present during any tumultuous time of any culture at any point in time. Like, you look up a time and, like, there's Sybil.
Right.
She's in every snapshot black and white picture of of huge events throughout history.
Right. Well, that's even worse.
Yeah.
Sybil definitely makes Quincy feel uneasy.
Excellent.
Yeah. So, Sybil just creeps Quincy out. I think there's one moment though where Zavril didn't meet Sybil before.
Yeah, that's right.
So he's speaking up. He's like, "Hey, who is this?" And Copernicus introduces her as his friend, or as a friend. I forget the exact words he used, but I was like, "No, that's not what she is to us." I wanted to clarify just a little bit.
Yeah. I've noticed that Copernicus does try to downplay Sybil's presence. He's always like, "Oh, it's just
Don't worry about it.
don't worry
Don't
about
worry about
it. Don't worry about her."
Yeah, and we lost James. He had to go, but so he's not here to defend Sybil. That's okay. Yeah, so we're in this tomb, and it was brought up maybe briefly in the show, and we just kind of speculated as characters. We don't have that information, but here behind the screen, I wanted to ask you, like, did the Toguta know of the presence of this tomb? Or was their village did they just live in this village on top of this ancient place, that without knowing it?
For the most part, the gist of this story arc kind of goes in with the Yuan-Ti culture and their demeanor, their, I guess, way of life. And they're all about fear and torture, but they're also incredibly smart and devious. I mean, the Yuan-Ti are no joke. They had massive civilizations. And
In Chult, or?
Not necessarily in Chult, I don't think. But from what I've read anyway, just period, they've been around, and they can easily They can easily be that villain that can take over the world. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of shit that's going on there that prevents them from doing so. And even in their history, you know, they're overly religious, but not, you know. So they went through this period of like a fanaticism almost, you know, where they kind of become, you know, radicalized, you know. And it's not because they love their god or anything like that. They worship a god or a primordial or whatever to obtain power, and it's no real secret, you know. It's almost like, right. And they do that. Their only real hope is to someday become powerful enough to devour that god that they worship and become a god themselves, you know, so to speak. You know, they're incredibly focused creatures. But
kind of reminds me of the I don't know if you've ever seen the cartoon El Dorado.
Yes.
Oh, I love that one.
It's a good one.
The priest in that one, he has kind of like that dark, like worship, like power hungry type of worship. Yeah. So
the whole thing with Taguda Village is it can be looked at under a few different lights. It could have been for fun. It could have been experimental. It could have been training purposes. But Taguda Village was more so a little playground for the Zinti, were this sort of creation by the Yuanti. They kind of assembled this village of primitive humans and used another primitive tribe, the Zinti, to constantly inflict fear, because they use fear to like empower themselves and feed their primordial, you know, Dendar, the night serpent, you know.
Wow.
So they kind of created this snow globe, so to speak, over this tomb. And until it got to the point where, you know, we need this artifact, you know, the time is up. This artifact is down there. We're going in, you know, and then the Zinti made that final push.
Oh, and
they used the Zinti and cleared, you know, Taguda Village ended. And what?
Well, they're devious enough to know to separate themselves from the Zinti, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like, nobody that knows of the cannibals knows that they're behind the cannibals, you know, and I think feed on fear, and
I think they're just so far below them. You know, I think it's not like they're not just like some other faction that's manipulating another faction. You know, the Zinti are so far below the Yuanti that they're like almost like aliens. If aliens were politically manipulating like humans, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's just it's wicked cool. I mean, I love the Yuanti. I love learning about them.
When I was reading about them, well, you know what it was is a few months ago I was like, what can I do with the Zinti to make them not just that run of the mill what you guys are expecting? I could have a powerful mage that's behind the curtain, a Wizard of Oz type deal that's doing this, you know? And I was just running through a few different ideas, and then I was reading through the Yuanti culture and everything. I was like, you know what? The Yuanti would do shit like this. They would just agonize in this small primitive group of people, just feeding off their fear, just cultivating, you know, like the machines in the Matrix, cultivating the humans, you know. So it all started to fall into place, and I got super excited about it. And I was like, this is fucking great. So
love it.
Yeah, and Zimwabi had always come off as a simple creature, you know, and his world is small, and that's part. He grew up in a snow globe created by, you know, and even dropped it a bit when he first met Saban. Saban's like, you know, the Zinti aren't who you always thought them to be, you know. Like Saban started to piece things together, you know. And I don't know what's going to happen with Zimwabi when he finds out that his entire life was built to serve such a dark purpose, you know. Being oppressed and living in fear his entire life, his village, his wife, his kids, you know.
That'll be an interesting story right there.
Yeah. So, but that's that. Yeah.
Yeah. We continue to explore the tomb, and it's not just a tomb. There's this other room that has a statue, and you describe it like it's this hideous serpentine statue, this disturbing centerpiece, maybe. And there are 2 corpses there, and we recognize them. We put it together pretty quickly that this is Ivana and Richard. Mm-hmm. And Richard's the scholar of this group of adventurers, and you were just talking about how like Savin was putting it together. I'm wondering, like, it's too bad that we don't have Richard's knowledge too about these topics.
Well, Savin started to put the Taguda Village thing together, but Richard's starting to put something greater together, and that kind of he didn't have a lot of between being tortured and and having to strangle Ivana to death because
you've got to make time between those 2 things.
Yeah. So I obviously I didn't want to drop too much.
See, looking at the calendar, I've got some torturing that's going to happen to me at 10 o'clock. So
I need to make time to write some more information about this. No, but so a little bit. It was just enough to kind of lead you guys into the main story of the Tomb of Annihilation. And that's kind of where I was going with it.
I was almost expecting this first mission to really be like an introduction, a much simpler introduction. Like, you're going out into the jungle, you're going to learn a little bit about the mechanics.
Yeah, here's some animals, here's some fauna, you're going to get home.
Right. This is what happens if you don't get enough water.
Yeah, we're balls deep in bullshit.
I know, but we're already seeing, like, the foreshadowing. We're picking up some clues.
Myths, bits and pieces.
Yeah, it's been great. So we see these 2 adventurers, and, we identify them. And Quincy, he wants to take something from them to give to their friends. We can't take the bodies out, so this is the next best thing in his mind. Mm-hmm. And I looked it up. It's pronounced brooch.
Fair enough.
It's spelled brooch, but you pronounce it brooch. Mm. He's investigating the bodies, and he gets some help, but he still can't determine like the actual cause of death. Aramay is having a reaction to seeing these corpses in here.
Iramay's reaction was at first like just completely visual, seeing the Richard and his cracked glasses, and and she touches her glasses, and she sees how quickly that Cholt can just devour an overly anxious academic, who's just there to learn,
And to be fair, Richard did belong to the Order of the Shield, though, which we could go into more details about.
But what she's seeing is not a warrior, It doesn't look like someone who's trained physically really in any area, just, someone like herself. And she is almost stunned, until someone says something, and then it focuses her direction towards the statue of Dendar.
But I thought it was great.
She definitely was like... That freaked her out, She saw herself laying there dead with her glasses cracked.
I liked that. I picked up on the background of the heartbeat while Aramay's talking about that. There's like this little heartbeat sound effect. I thought it was a good touch.
Yeah,
that would be James. He's been messing around with that Sirenscape.
He's having fun with it.
Yeah, it's
good.
Good
yeah.
Stuff.
So you did say that you can go into a little bit about the Order of the Shield, and you don't have to go into a lot of detail, but just a quick description.
Yeah, I'll save it for another. But for the Order,
like a one sentence.
It's one of the arguably it's one of the good factions in the realms. They're your typical paladin. I think would be a proper description of the Order of the Shield. They're just there to serve good.
Okay.
And any evil that's trying to thwart the progress of good, or they're going to be there.
I will never understand paladins. I won't. I'd never be able to play one.
I must have like 4 alt characters ready to go. One of them's a paladin.
Really?
I don't know which one.
John loves paladins.
I
I could never successfully role play a paladin.
I think some people view paladins too narrowly. I think there are a variety of ways that paladins could be played.
Especially in 5e, I feel they really opened it up with the convictions rather than the deity. You just it's easy. You find something to believe in, and then just
Give me some to believe.
yeah.
That's the part, though. That's like the part that's easy for you, but that's the part that as a player, I would struggle to not always, but to remember to bring to the forefront once in a while.
Well, think of it like you do it a lot with your anthropology. I mean, you kind
Yeah,
of bring that
that's a
in,
good point.
and it would be basically doing the same thing, but with whatever your oath is.
Yep.
Yeah.
But these people like Order of the Shield, you're talking about these, general like factions, good factions, bad factions. Would
Well-
a faction like the Order of the Shield, who's considered, quote unquote good, what they're doing in Chult, is this going to be related to the Death Curse? Like, are they there? Everybody's here, flocked here, investigating.
Yeah, I
this?
mean, so the common factions of the Sword Coast,
Yep.
the Zentarum, the Harpers, everybody's heard them. They might have come up in just about every campaign setting.
Flaming Fist.
The Flaming Fist.
The Flaming Fist. No, but I believe for the most part they're all to some degree good. Just some are more so than others. The Zentarum I believe is often looked kind of down. They might do things in questionable ways, or, and there are some that rub each other the wrong way. But for the most part, I think when shit hits the fan, they kind of all have agents that are trying to solve the same problem for the most part. And the Order of the Shield is kind of that. They do it in the way of your traditional paladin, I guess you would say.
Potentially, I mean, Camp Righteous is presumably
boots on
tied
the
in
ground.
with them.
Yeah, boots
Yeah.
on the ground. They build outposts. They're right there on the front line, And and one of their outposts was just recently fallen.
I'm sure if we see Saven and Elgin again, we'll learn more about them.
Yep. Like, it's also worth noting before we get too far about the factions is I don't want to. You have the Zentarum, you have the Lord's Alliance, and you have the Harpers. I mentioned them, and I guess for the listeners out there that are looking for consistency and everything, and while we're on that topic of consistency, admittedly, I don't know enough about all of these factions to really take them and make them my own without disturbing the realms, right? So what you'll find is in a lot of cases, I'll make subdivisions of these factions so I can have a little bit more room to play with them.
Which is easy to do on Chult, I bet. It's...
And while they're all there and you're going to run into members of the Zentarum because there's side quests related to them or storylines related to them, and I'll feel confident running those because they're official. But when you hear me talk about the Order of the Shield, a lot of veterans might be like, I've never heard of that, but they're part of that idea that it just makes me a little bit more comfortable as a DM to play with them while respecting the real orders,
Yeah, and a lot of organizations in real life have, little sects and
right, and in some cases I'll go even further with it. I'll subdivide it a few times, So I just want to throw that out there for anyone that's listening and wondering, like, well, what is this? Well, I never heard of that order, but it is, yeah. So I figured I'd just throw that out there.
These bodies are here, and Irme is not only having like a little bit of recognition of her mortality and the reality of the place that we're in, but some of her past comes into play and reveals some lore about the primordial Dundar and the god Uktau. And this all happened because of Irme's conversation with Sylvain on the ship, was it?
on the ship. Yep.
Yes, so we learn is that this statue, is this like this is a representation of Dundar?
Yep. It's it kind of goes along with the false tomb thing, It's a Yuanti tomb. The Yuanti worship, they worship. They have a few different options of worship. Dundar being one of them. The Night Serpent is pretty much the primordial that rules over nightmares. So in their priestesses, which are like the pretty much highest tier of the Yuanti culture,
And the priestess that we heard about a priestess.
Yeah, Fenthaza, I think her name
But we
was.
never ran into her while we were there.
No, you never ran into her. They're pretty.
Are they all women priestesses? Like
Yes,
it's a matriarch.
of Dendar. Yes, the Dendar
Dendar.
priestesses. I forget their exact Master's Manual name, but they pretty much get. It's actually really cool. They pretty much get these. Dendar like inflicts them with nightmares, as Dendar does with everything. I don't think he specifically chooses them, but they take those nightmares and interpret them as omens. And then they proceed to kind of make them a reality,
Wow.
and that's their power, That's why they love torturing people and inflicting fear, invoking fear.
Here's this thing that scared the shit out of me while I'm sleeping. I'm going to manifest it in the world.
Yeah, they bring it, because they believe that it was an omen, that it was supposed to happen, so they push it into reality. It's pretty awesome.
I'm afraid to think too hard about that.
Yeah, it might come out.
Yeah, so I'm trying to as we're exploring all of this, a whole bunch of things enter my mind. We've got this structure it's a false tomb, but there's also this other room that has the statue for the primordial, and there are these dead bodies here, and it almost seems like, I don't know if we can't determine the cause of death, but we could speculate, whether it's ritualistic, whether they're sacrifices, and I mean, it's the whole thing paints a picture, right? I mean, we see in the sarcophagus that something is missing, that we suspect that the priestess was looking for something, that she found it, and that's why she's no longer in the camp. And yet they still have the slaves working. There's this statue with the dead bodies. I don't know, the whole thing sort of paints a picture that there's still something happening.
Yeah, they're building an obelisk as well, right?
Yeah, it's a construction site as well as a dig site. Yeah, so maybe we'll learn more about that in the future.
Yes.
Okay, I won't press you too hard about that, though. I won't press you too hard about it. But what about a little hint? What would we have to do to know the purpose of the spires?
I think you'd have to see them in their finished state,
Okay.
And you'll probably come across them. There's others out there.
Okay.
And I guess that, I could get away with saying that. Well, it was tough, because you guys rolled good on your check. Oh, I guess I also want to reiterate. So in episode 10, Quincy checks the spires, right? And I tell him, it could be, portal magic. It could be a focus, Right. And then in episode 11, Copernicus checks the spires, and I tell him it could be portal magic, could be his focus, And I had completely forgotten that I had already.
I forgot.
And I amazed myself at how accurate my second description was. It was spot on.
Yeah.
You can tell I'm genuine.
I don't have much more to go over. I guess there's a little bit of curiosity about what Irame and Sylvain talked about, because, we learn a little. Obviously, they had some conversations about this primordial. So maybe a lot of it had to do with the greater mission in Schultz, but it definitely raises my curiosity. What was going on behind that door?
I like to think that as well, and actually it's not something that John and I necessarily, I don't have a notepad of all the things I talked about with her, because it would probably give away a lot of stuff to us as players in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more of a tool to be used in situations such as that, to give a piece of lore that might apply, that may or may not apply to the larger story.
Right.
I mean, that could have nothing to do with the death curse or the larger part of the story, or it could.
Well, from a DM's perspective, it was a way to, it was exactly that, but it was also, what I find is that a lot of times, and this is just my own inability to quickly find reason behind mechanics, you find a lot, especially knowledge checks and stuff like that, you find that I oftentimes wonder, how would you know this stuff?
Right.
You know what I mean? Mechanically, it says you do, So I try to, capitalize on moments like that where she has private time with Syndra, and what would they talk about? Well, Syndra, being who she is, and on her way to Chult, would probably have this thick book opened, in her quarter along the journey, and Erme, being an academic, obviously would, come on in. This is what I'm doing. Check this out. Did you know that Chult? And, I imagine just story. Syndra has all sorts of things to talk to Erme about Chult.
During that episode, I put some thought into it as well as to why Erme just wouldn't immediately share all the information that Syndra gave her as far as trying to solve the larger mystery of the story. And, back to what I said, basically, is I imagine at this point, Syndra just has a collection of shit that might apply.
Right.
That she doesn't know if it does or not.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why Erme doesn't have, and it isn't treating it as gospel or like everything has something to do with it, because
right, and certainly
it may or may not.
And certainly,
and that's why we're there.
Even while Syndra is trying to put the pieces together, certainly Erme would have an even less of an idea of what pieces actually matter and what pieces don't. But what we find of value ultimately on Richard is his journal entry. And we don't get any details as far as I know from this, but we do see the date of 14 Nightall. Mm-hmm. And that's where the episode ends. Mm-hmm. And that's the date that we arrived in Port Nyanzaru.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which kind of, I like how you do that. And it's kind of cool to get a glimpse of parallel events that are tied to our story.
Mm-hmm.
Getting any sense of time when you're playing D&D, I think, is useful. Just the fact that we keep track of the Nightals is
the Nightals.
That's like
the date.
What do you guys do when Nightall's over? And you enter Hammer?
Keeping track of all the Nightals, and there's been like 6 Nightals. But that makes a huge difference for me, comparatively speaking, to the other 2 games I've played, because
it really does
time
ground
reference
you in,
helps a lot, because you don't even think about it sometimes.
It does ground you in the reality.
Sometimes I will be playing the game as if it's nighttime or if it's daytime. In my mind, in my imagination as I'm playing, I'm like, okay, we're doing this and the sun and it's hot. And then all of a sudden John's like, and it's night. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. It's not daytime. It's not, and I have to like reprogram my imagination to set the scene again. So keeping as good track of it as we do is helpful for me in that aspect.
Oh, I agree. Absolutely.
I've been trying how to find a blank calendar that I can make, It's tough I wish I just had a actual calendar that I could write in the boxes rather than I do it all in a vertical, you know what I mean? It's weird. I found a few, but they weren't, exactly what I was looking for, but I found that odd that it's so hard to find,
Yeah, we definitely we definitely live in a good time. We're playing. We came back into the game at a good time in history because there are a ton of tools out there.
Absolutely.
That weren't readily available back in the old days. I mean,
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything.
But it's still hard to find those niche things.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my whole thing as a DM, it's actually quite simple. I use, if anyone's curious, I have my laptop. I've got Roll20, and even if we're not doing a Roll20 battle, I do all my prep there. All my writing is in there, and then I got D&D Beyond. And between those two, the Roll20 and D&D Beyond, it's like I don't need anything else. Everything is there. It's awesome. There's back in the day, you had stacks of books and, thumbing through everything. And
what's funny is I grew up in everything was digital. We were using laptops in high school, and when I went to college, everything was digital. But through all of that, I still worked better writing and with books, just retention-wise.
Oh yeah.
I still, like, when I wrote down Irame's story, I wrote it down. I can't type something out and retain it.
I've gotten better at that, but I'm the same way. Like if I write it with a pencil, I retain it a lot more.
Yep. I think that with practice, like, you would come to retain it through typing. Like, you'd retrain your brain to do that. But because I never trained my brain to do that, I still work better with a pen and paper.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't. I can't even write anymore with a pen or a pencil. Like my
watching you write when the power went out was what made me think of it, because he was like, I can't do this, and he wrote like 3 lines, and he was like,
my fucking hand hurt. I was like, I can't even do this.
He said that, and I had to hold back a scoff. You know what I mean? But then I was like, it's just work. People work differently, you know.
Right.
But I was almost like.
So episode 11 ends. We discovered the journal, and that's the end of episode 11. It ties the story together.
Yep.
Because it ties their events together with what we've been doing. It gives a connection to the timeline, and we're here looking for them. So it just gives us a little bit of insight as to what they're doing when we arrive in Schultz.
Yeah.
And I liked episodes 10 and 11 a lot.
Yeah, same here. 11 was arguably my favorite one so far. I feel like, what it is, just to touch on it, as me personally, I like the small dungeon setting. I like to DM a small dungeon setting, and it could be just my style. When I was first coming back into D&D, I don't know if you remember the little crypt there beneath
The catacombs.
The catacombs beneath Last Hope. Like, I was thinking back to this. I was like, of course I would go there, like, first and foremost, because that's my comfort zone, I like to be able to look at a map and say, what's in this room, and then come up with all the little story that this room can tell. That entry room where you guys came down the lift, all the broken glass and the empty scroll cases, the smell of sulfur hanging in the air, like, that tells a story in its own right. And then the sarcophagus room with the glyphs on the wall. There's a sarcophagus, glyphs or hieroglyphics on the wall. There's the bars were pushed in. I like telling a story.
Oh yeah, we never really quite figured that one out either.
Yeah. I like the environment telling a story, and for some reason it's easy for me to do in a confined space rather than outside in the open world.
I kind of like smaller dungeons too.
Yeah.
Like the mega dungeons. Like, have you seen those maps for the mega dungeons? Oh my god, they're ridiculous, because normally you have a map. Even in big dungeons, you have a map like dungeon level 1, dungeon level 2. Mega dungeons are like west side of dungeon level 1.
Yeah,
like, holy shit,
it's too much go.
Yeah.
When
As a player so far, I definitely like the more open.
Yeah.
Whenever we're in a space and whenever we're in a space that's only 3 squares wide, I'm like, what the fuck?
Oh yeah, for the tactical stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff,
it can be
especially
confined.
Being Irame and having not a lot of hit points and trying to keep a distance.
Well, the story's definitely opened up. It's pivoted, and we've got a lot. Our characters have a lot to think about, and we've got a big adventure before us.
Yep.
That's what it feels like.
It's a long road ahead.
Can't wait to see what happens next. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Good night.